They came ashore before dawn. The Mediterranean lay flat and deceptive, a sheet of dark glass broken only by the wakes of landing craft pushing toward the Sicilian coast. Engines muttered. Men whispered. Rifles were checked again and again, not from doubt, but from fear-seeking motion. Sicily waited. A low, black shape against the horizon. Ancient. Silent. Watching. General George S. Patton stood rigid at the bow, helmet pulled low, jaw locked in place. The twin pistols at his hips caught the faintest hint of light, polished even now, even here. His riding crop tapped once against his boot. A habit. A warning. This was supposed to be straightforward. A proving ground. A necessary step before France. That was the first lie Sicily told the Allies. Patton expected violence. He expected machine gun fire tearing through surf, mortars walking up the sand, men falling before they reached dry ground. That was how landings worked. That was how enemies fought. Instead, there was nothing. Landing ramps crashed down. Water surged in. Boots splashed forward. Hearts pounded so loudly men swore the enemy could hear them. Silence. No tracer fire. No explosions. No screaming steel. Patton raised his binoculars, scanning the shoreline. Empty pillboxes. Abandoned wire. A beach that looked almost welcoming. He felt it immediately. A pressure behind the eyes. A tightening in the gut. Silence was not safety. Silence was calculation. "They're letting us land," he said quietly. An aide glanced at him. "Sir." "They're letting us land," Patton repeated. "Which means they've chosen where we'll die." Once the first units pushed inland, the illusion shattered. Sicily was not open ground. It was a maze carved by centuries of war. Narrow roads twisted between stone walls. Olive groves broke lines of sight. Low hills rose abruptly, folding the land into blind angles and sudden choke points. Tanks crawled forward in single file. Infantry hugged ditches. Dust filled mouths and lungs. Then the first shell struck. A Sherman at the head of the column vanished in flame. The blast lifted the turret and hurled it sideways. Burning fuel spilled across the road. Another round followed. Then another. German artillery. Not random. Measured. Pre-registered. Patton lowered his binoculars slowly. "This terrain," he said, voice flat, "was designed to slaughter armies." Italian soldiers broke quickly. Hands went up. Rifles hit the dirt. Fear shone openly in their eyes. Some wept. Some begged. Most were simply relieved it was over. German soldiers were different. They struck like knives. A single rifle shot from a church tower. A machine gun erupting from behind a vineyard wall. Mortars falling with perfect spacing, each explosion walking closer. Then silence again. By the time Allied units maneuvered to respond, the Germans were gone. Slipped away through hills and stone paths they knew by heart. Patton watched reports stack up. Brief contact. Heavy fire. Enemy withdrawn. This was not retreat. This was control. "They're shaping the fight," Patton said. "And they're doing it on their terms." By midday, the sun turned merciless. Steel helmets burned skin. Uniforms darkened with sweat. Water disappeared faster than supply lines could deliver it. Men stumbled. Lips split and bled. Eyes dulled. Engines overheated. Radios failed. Ammunition belts grew too hot to handle. Patton rode forward regardless. His face remained impassive, but the heat pressed against him too, heavy and suffocating. Sicily did not care about rank. Fatigue, he barked to an exhausted unit, is what happens when the mind quits first. The men straightened. Not because the heat had lessened, but because Patton was watching. Maps lied. Units landed miles from their intended positions. Paratroopers scattered in darkness and wind. British formations advanced on different axes, unaware of American movements. Radios crackled with confusion. Patton slammed his palm onto a field table. "This plan assumes the enemy cooperates," he growled. "He won't." An officer hesitated. "Sir, we're still waiting for confirmation from." Patton cut him off. "Waiting gets men killed." He made a decision that would echo through the campaign. He would not wait. Patton pushed his forces hard. Armor surged forward when doctrine called for consolidation. Infantry advanced without perfect coordination. Flanking movements replaced cautious probing. An aide stepped close. "Sir, our flank is exposed." Patton did not turn. "Everything is exposed," he said. "That's what makes war honest." Speed denied the Germans time. It disrupted their careful withdrawals. It forced decisions before plans were ready. Momentum became Patton's shield. Every village became a fight. Fallschirmjäger paratroopers dug in behind stone walls. Machine guns covered narrow approaches. Mortars rained down with clinical precision. Men fell. Medics ran. Stretchers moved constantly. Patton observed from forward positions, binoculars steady despite the chaos. "They're professionals," he said quietly. "And professionals don't panic." Then, louder, "Crush them." Artillery answered. Villages burned. The road forward filled with smoke and bodies. Civilians lined the roads. Old men watched silently from doorways. Women clutched children as tanks rolled past. Some waved hesitantly. Some cursed openly. Many simply stared. A shell struck a farmhouse. The blast tore the roof apart. Screams followed. Patton turned his head away, jaw tight. War did not pause for the innocent. It consumed them without apology. The sky belonged to the Allies. On paper. Smoke obscured targets. Weather grounded sorties. Communications failed. A bomb landed dangerously close to headquarters, showering the area with debris. Patton stood unmoved as dust settled on his uniform. "Next time," he said dryly, "tell them where I am." Captured German documents told the real story. This was not a collapse. This was a withdrawal by design. Every delay. Every rearguard stand. Every village fight had one purpose. Time. German forces were moving toward Messina, preparing evacuation across the strait. Patton read the reports twice. "If they leave this island," he said, "we fight them again somewhere worse." He folded the papers carefully. "That," he added, "will not happen if I can help it." The realization hardened Patton's resolve. The enemy was not running. They were slipping away, one calculated mile at a time. And Patton refused to let Sicily become a lesson in missed opportunity. Official orders placed him on the flank. Guard the left. Support the British. Maintain pressure, but do not overextend. Patton read the orders carefully. He always did. Then he looked at the map again. The roads told a different story. The terrain demanded speed. The enemy's intent was now clear. If he waited, the Germans would leave. If he advanced, he would collide with command. Patton chose collision. "We advance," he said. "Now." An aide hesitated. "Sir, Montgomery." Patton cut him off. "Montgomery will get there when he gets there. I intend to beat the enemy." Engines roared to life. Columns moved. The race had begun. The drive west was relentless. Armor surged forward, tracks grinding stone and dust. Infantry clung to trucks, rifles across knees, eyes fixed ahead. Artillery leapt forward in bounds, firing, displacing, firing again. Italian resistance crumbled. Whole units surrendered without firing a shot. White flags appeared in windows. Weapons piled in the streets. German units withdrew rather than be trapped. They left mines. Snipers. Booby traps. Patton pressed through all of it. Palermo fell in days. Faster than anyone believed possible. Patton entered the city riding forward, uniform stained with dust and sweat. Crowds watched silently as American armor rolled past ancient buildings. He had not just taken a city. He had rewritten the campaign timetable. An Allied command took notice. Cameras followed Patton everywhere now. His polished pistols gleamed in the sun. His helmet sat perfectly angled. His words were sharp, decisive, quotable. Wars, he told reporters, are won by men who attack. The image spread quickly. But behind the image was strain. Losses mounted. Men collapsed from exhaustion. Supply lines stretched thin. Patton felt it, but did not show it. Momentum, once lost, was nearly impossible to regain. And he would not lose it. Northern Sicily rose like a wall. Steep slopes. Narrow passes. Villages clinging to rock like barnacles. Perfect defensive ground. German artillery dominated from above. Mortars dropped with deadly accuracy. Machine guns covered every approach. Patton studied the terrain briefly. Then gave the order. Up. Infantry climbed under fire. Boots slipped on gravel slicked with blood. Men fell. Others stepped over them and kept moving. Stopping meant dying. Artillery thundered. Smoke filled the valleys. The mountains echoed with the sound of war. Patton watched the assaults through binoculars, face expressionless. This, he said quietly, is where wars are decided. The pace became brutal. No rest. No pause. No relief. Units rotated only when absolutely necessary. Sleep came in minutes, not hours. Meals were eaten standing, if at all. An officer approached Patton late one night. "Sir, the men are at the edge." Patton looked at him steadily. "So is the enemy." He leaned closer. "And only one of us gets to quit." The advance continued. Reports arrived hourly. German ferries crossing the Strait of Messina under smoke screens. Vehicles rolling aboard. Artillery pieces being saved. Time was bleeding away. Patton drove his forces harder than ever. No sleep, he ordered. No unnecessary stops. Engines ran through the night. Headlights stayed dark. Columns moved by instinct and discipline. Feet blistered. Knees failed. But the line advanced. Messina loomed ahead. Messina fell. American troops entered the city cautiously, weapons raised. The harbor was silent. No ships. No equipment. No enemy. The Germans were gone. Evacuated across the strait. Patton stood at the water's edge, staring toward the mainland. His fists clenched slowly. "So close," he said. No anger. No shouting. Just iron disappointment. The campaign ended, but Sicily remained marked. Graves lined roads and hillsides. Simple markers. Names carved into wood. Young men who would never leave the island. Patton walked among them alone. For once, there was no speech prepared. No audience. No bravado. Only silence. And understanding. They had expected a general who followed plans. They encountered a commander who imposed his will on chaos. Patton had moved faster than doctrine allowed. He had defied orders without breaking the mission. He had exposed Allied weaknesses and forced German discipline to bend. High command debated him. Soldiers followed him. History recorded him. Because in Sicily, under impossible odds, among desperate men, one decisive leader had forced the war forward by sheer will. The island answered. With fire. With blood. And with truth. The guns fell silent, but Sicily did not feel quiet. Smoke still drifted over hills. Ruins still smoldered. The earth itself seemed exhausted, as if the island had finally exhaled after weeks of violence. For General George S. Patton, the campaign was over. But the meaning of it was only beginning to settle. On paper, Sicily was a success. The island had fallen. Axis forces had been driven out. The Allies had secured a stepping stone toward mainland Europe. But Patton knew better. Victory measured in maps was clean. Victory measured in men was not. Reports crossed his desk daily. Casualty lists. Equipment losses. Exhausted units barely holding cohesion. The speed that had won ground had also stripped nerves raw. Patton understood that cost intimately. He had demanded everything. And Sicily had collected its price. Patton moved among his troops without ceremony. Dust still coated their uniforms. Faces were hollow. Eyes carried something heavier than fatigue. These were not parade soldiers. These were men who had climbed under fire, fought through heat, confusion, and death, and kept moving because stopping was never an option. One private looked up as Patton passed. The general paused. "You did well," Patton said simply. The man straightened, pride cutting through exhaustion like a blade. Moments like that mattered. Patton knew it. Allied headquarters buzzed with debate. Patton had disobeyed orders. Advanced without permission. Raced across the island with a recklessness that terrified planners. Some called it brilliance. Others called it dangerous. Patton did not defend himself. He never did. He believed results spoke louder than explanations. And Sicily spoke clearly. Patton had seen things in Sicily that reshaped how the Allies would fight the rest of the war. He had seen that speed could overwhelm even disciplined defenders. He had seen that hesitation was deadlier than risk. He had seen that terrain could be as lethal as any weapon. He had seen that air superiority meant nothing without coordination. He had seen that command clarity mattered more than perfect plans. And most of all, he had seen what men were capable of when pushed beyond what they believed was possible. Those lessons would follow him. Into France. Into Germany. Into history. Not all memories were tactical. There were moments Patton could not erase. Moments when exhaustion and pressure cracked discipline. Moments that would stain his record and fuel criticism long after Sicily faded from headlines. Patton was not blind to his flaws. But he did not regret pushing forward. In war, he believed, mercy came from victory, not restraint. And victory demanded hardness. The German evacuation haunted him. He replayed it endlessly. Hours lost. Delays compounded. Smoke screens drifting across the strait. So close. Had they trapped the enemy in Sicily, the war in Italy might have unfolded very differently. Instead, those same German units would fight again. At Salerno. At Anzio. At Monte Cassino. Sicily had been a warning. And a preview. Before Sicily, Patton was a name. After Sicily, he was a force. Soldiers knew what following him meant. Speed. Pressure. No excuses. Commanders knew what working with him required. Flexibility. Nerves. Acceptance of risk. The Allies had been shocked not just by what Patton did, but by how completely he reshaped expectations. Impossible odds. A hostile island. Broken plans. A disciplined enemy withdrawing by design. Desperate men. Exhausted, overheated, confused, yet advancing anyway. One decisive leader. A commander who chose motion over hesitation, will over caution. Authority validated. Ground taken. Momentum seized. History altered. This was the pattern Patton believed in. And Sicily had confirmed it. As days passed, the sounds of battle faded. Engines quieted. Artillery rested. The sea returned to calm. Patton stood once more near the water, looking toward the mainland. He knew the war was far from over. But he also knew this. Sicily had hardened him. And it had hardened the army that would follow him north. Historians would argue over Sicily for decades. Was Patton reckless? Was he brilliant? Was the cost justified? But none would deny the impact. Sicily revealed truths the Allies could no longer ignore. About themselves. About their enemy. And about the kind of leaders war demands. Patton had not simply fought a campaign. He had exposed reality. The sun dipped low over the Sicilian hills. Graves cast long shadows across the earth. Patton turned away, mounted his vehicle, and issued new orders. The war was moving on. And so would he. Because in Sicily, amid fire and confusion, one man had seen the battlefield clearly. And once seen, it could never be unseen.